morning, Sister Mary Kay Dolan.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank
Wonderful. With a name like Dolan and a face like yours,
Yes.
you must be from Southside Chicago.
I certainly am. St. Killian's Parish, okay.
Oh my.
Yes.
And the parish was like a family in itself, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I mean, the whole neighborhood that I was raised in is kind of like a family. I mean, I had great feelings about the neighborhood and the people on down the street next door. And
well, little did you know when you were going to Killian's that there would be a Vatican II.
that's for sure. No, because we were certainly pre-Vatican too.
And was that the changes at Vatican II time in the 60s, late 60s, a challenge for you?
Not really. I think I never found them too upsetting. I kind of went with the flow and enjoyed a lot of them, especially not having the full habit. And I think just it was a good time for me, and I did not find I was with a lot of sisters at that point that were energetic, and we were happy about the changes, and so it was a positive time in my life.
Did you do any additional study after the renewal time?
Well, it was around renewal time that I was able to work for an MDiv at the Jesuit school in Berkeley. I was kind of a shock that I was invited to go there and to get a Master of Divinity. And so I went there, and it really kind of had a big change in my life, because that led me into community organizing, which I then did for many years. And
how did that happen?
Well, one of the requirements for the MDiv at Berkeley was that you do a field ed program. And so one of the things that they offered was a community organizing institute that was based in Oakland. I was in the West at the time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I applied for that. And after a 6-week session, then I volunteered to work for the organization, the Oakland Community Organizations. I volunteered to work there for a year while I was still going to school. It was kind of a combination, and it wasn't really. I only had one group to work with, and then I worked for that year as a volunteer, and then I was hired on for the organization, and I worked there for 6 years then.
In Oakland?
In Oakland, with the Oakland Community
Well, you must have loved that.
Oh, I did.
Yes.
I mean, it was a new experience for me, but it was one that I had kind of had roots back in Chicago with Saul Alinsky and his back at the Yards Council and things. I knew about that growing up, and I was kind of fascinated by that. So I enjoyed that thoroughly. And then from there, then I went to St. Louis, where I was the director of an organization for 11 years.
Was it the same?
The same type of organizing.
Yes.
We had lots and lots of meetings.
Well, what did that involve when you say community organizing?
Okay. Well, first of all, it was canvassing and finding out what people's issues were. And then it was working with the neighborhood people to set up meetings with like the appropriate city officials or the people like the traffic department or the police. We had lots of meetings with the police department. Just the recent news, I mean, kind of brings back to me the countless meetings that we
You
had.
knew where Ferguson was then?
Oh yeah, that was, yes. And I was very happy that when Ferguson, when that whole thing broke, that that St. Louis City seemed to remain calm, and maybe with something to do with the fact that we had so many police meetings. In St. Louis, then, we were even able to set up a housing corporation where we built a number of affordable homes, for about 60 affordable homes, and some apartment buildings. No, it was 26 apartments. And so it was a very It was exciting, and at the same time, you were raising money. I mean, to keep the whole thing going, and so there was a lot of proposal writing and a lot of leadership development. Because as the organizers, we were not. It was not our place to be speaking for the people, and so. But I mean,
You drew that from the community, the leadership. Yes.
And those folks were really marvelous. I mean, they knew the issues, they could speak to them, and but it was just kind of giving them the confidence that they could stand up and talk and relate to one another and to the city officials or to the state officials.
That's
or whoever.
beautiful. So you were there how many years?
I was in St. Louis for 11 years.
Oh my, that's probably one of the longest ministries
Well,
you had.
the next one was my longest. My
Oh.
last one was my longest. When I left St. Louis, I was anxious to work on a more personal level with people, and so there was an opening at St. Leonard's Ministries, which was an organization that was set up to work with men who had been in prison. And Bob Doherty, the brother of one of our sisters, wanted to set up a program for women exiting prison. So I was interviewed by Bob and assumed that position to start up a residence for women ex-offenders. And I was there for 16 years.
Is that what they call Grace House?
Grace House, that's right, it was Grace House. And we had on an average of about 17, 18 women at a time. And they came directly from the prison. And they were all on probation. No, they were on parole. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I worked with some of the finest women who had had some bad experiences in their life, and all of them really had drug or alcohol problems.
Yeah. Right.
But they were really had been deprived of good education and lots of the finer things of life. And I often remember on the first Christmas we had some poinsettias, little poinsettia plants that we gave to each one. And I can remember one of the ladies came up to me and she said, "Oh, sister, thank you for those beautiful roses." And I thought, oh my
God bless
gosh,
Yeah.
beautiful roses. That was fine. And then there's another story I like to tell about that. At Easter time, we had a program well, it was another group that had this march for peace on Good Friday. And although we were non-denominational, we couldn't ask the people to go to church or anything like that. We did ask the women to consider going on this march for peace. It was in downtown St. Louis. So
Downtown Chicago or?
no, downtown Chicago. That's right, downtown Chicago. So we had a nice breakfast in the morning, and then they all headed out about before 12, and then they were downtown and participated in the march. And while they were gone on the march, the staff and we got little Easter presents and Easter baskets all together, all through the house. And so when they came in, we just said, "Well, how was it?" And they, "Oh yeah, it was really cold. It was whatever the weather was that day." And I said, "Well, the Easter Bunny was here." "Huh?" And then, the Easter Bunny. Why don't you look around? Well, they went through that house and just were so. I just cried. I mean, they were so excited.
A first experience.
Their first, and the interesting thing was, in all the years that followed, when they came back from the walk, they hit that front door and run through the house. We didn't ever said a word to them because word had just passed down from group to group.
Yeah.
But they went through that house. And they, "Sister, I didn't get." "Yes, you did. Everybody has one. There's one for everybody. So go find it."
So you hid the baskets.
So we hid the baskets and everything, and so
how
we had to
clever.
go find the basket with their name on it. And so it was just things like having a birthday party for them. But they had there were a lot of problems. I mean, they were a lot of a lot of them were mothers who did not have custody of their children, and it was interesting because when we started out, it was to provide food and shelter and clothing for the women. But of course, the longer they were around them, there was the medical needs, the psychological needs, the counseling needs, education, employment, and I have to give a lot of credit to Bob Doherty, and.
That's Grace's brother.
Grace's brother, yes. I mean, they set up the Michael Barlow Center, which was a place for them to learn occupational job training.
Yes.
And just a lot of good things. We had the Adler psychological group came in and did all counseling with the women.
Is that still operating today?
Yes, yes.
Are any of our sisters there?
I don't know that anyone is still
I know
there.
it. Leonard,
At St. Leonard's,
Sharon Bosler is there.
Yeah, Sharon is there. And I think no, I was just thinking of a couple other people, but they're not our nuns. But for a while, Kathy Nolan and I were among the three people. There was another woman, Rochelle Bowles. The three of us started that, and then, but it's still going, and it's had a few rough times, but it keeps on and keeps on. And I would say Bob Doherty is the guiding spirit behind that. He has developed a network that is fantastic. So I was there for. I left there. My eyes got bad, so I was not able to drive any longer or read real well. So that's when I came to Adrian.
You came to Adrian, yes. Yeah. I'm so impressed by your commitment to our elder sisters, specifically with our 101-year-old sister.
Sister Jean Edward.
Yes.
Jean Edward Selke. When I first came to Adrian, I felt at kind of at a loss because I didn't have any responsibilities. So I asked around, and they said, well, we could feed sisters. And I said, because I was somewhat limited in what I could do because of my eyesight. So I start meeting with Jean, and she just delights me to this day. I mean, that was in 2012, and but she. I think was a pretty hard taskmaster in her day. I think she demanded a lot of herself, though. I mean, but she loves to teach, and she still teaches. Even up to last week, she was still teaching.
Well, that's a delight. So were you there for all meals or the main meal?
Lunch and dinner.
Lunch and dinner.
Lunch and supper. Yeah. So
well, that's a mutual gift then, isn't it?
Oh, it really is.
Yes.
I mean, I tell her she's the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah.
She's been pretty quiet the past week. I hope because sometimes when she starts to chatter, she just goes on and on and on, and she's talking about some things make perfect sense and others don't. Yeah. But
there's one sister that's older.
Yes, Sister Maura Phillips.
Sister Maura.
She's 102. But Jean, I think, was more of an outgoing person, and I think Jean was always the quiet one.
God bless her. Yeah.
But there's, but
had you known her before you?
No,
came?
I didn't.
Do people remember your name as being? Was it Sean?
Sean Marie. Yeah.
Do people call you that?
Some do. Yeah. There's some sisters in my crowd who are.
After whom were you named?
My mom and dad. My father was John and my mother was Marie.
Did you come from a large Irish family?
I had 3 brothers. One is deceased now, but I had 3
Did they give you a hard time growing up?
I gave them a hard time. I was the oldest, and so consequently, I just made them rule the roost. I ruled the roost, and they were the beneficiaries of my quirks and things like that.
And so I presume they're still living in Illinois?
They are, yes, all 3 of them. I mean, my one brother has passed away, but the other 2, one is in Waukegan and one is in Palos Heights in Chicago, around the Chicago area.
So you had the Adrian Dominicans in Killian's.
At St. Killian's, yes. And then when
Who were some of your teachers
Sister
there?
John Ellen and Sister Rose Giralda was, Sister Catherine Anthony, Sister Jean Albert,
Wow.
and Sister Virginia Marie, Sister John Ellen, and Sister Rose Giralda. Sister Rose Giralda was my 8th grade teacher, and I just had a great respect for Sister Rose. The interesting thing was when after we graduated from 8th grade, Rose was our 8th grade teacher, and Rose went to St. Raphael's in Los Angeles, and for 6 years, and then I had my 4 years in high school and a year as a postulant and a year as a novice, and my first mission was St. Raphael's.
Was she there?
But she wasn't there.
Oh, no.
I really wanted her to, but anyway, she wasn't. But it was.
Did you ever live with her again?
No, I never did.
Was she your sponsor then?
She said she was too far away to be a sponsor. So Sister Gordy in Creighton
yes.
was the one who helped me get ready. But I have great respect always for Sister Rose Giralda.
So I presume you went to Aquinas then, if you were at
No,
Killian's.
I didn't. I went to the Academy of Our Lady, to Longwood, where the School Sisters of Notre Dame. And there were a number of us. No, Maggie Menard and I went to Longwood, but we had other women who entered the congregation, Janet Trout and Pat McGann and Pat Brady.
From Aquinas.
Went to Aquinas. And Kathleen Christoph, she was before, I think she entered the prep program early on. And then Pat Turley, but Pat Turley was a year older than we were. But
did you all travel here together too?
No, we didn't, because I entered in August, and the rest of them entered in in June. My mother said she wanted me to take the summer and go to the prom and do all those things, and then I could go.
Wise mother.
Yeah, my mom was very good. My mother and father were wonderful people, and but
you must have had a peaceful household, because
not really. It was kind of tumultuous at times. My father was.
Well, you went through World War II and the ramifications.
Yeah. My father was not in the service, because by the time the war had started, he was married and had a couple of kids. But his 2 brothers were in the Navy. 2 of his brothers were in the Navy. And then we had another uncle, a priest, who was, but no, we had a happy childhood, but I wouldn't say it was calm and peaceful. It was kind of tumultuous at times.
Well, maybe that's kind of normal.
Oh, yes. That's when I came to the postulancy, and they said, our mistress at that point was kind of a bombastic person, and she never bothered. I mean, I thought she was just normal. But she reminded me of my father.
Irish.
And
Well, you mentioned St. Raphael's. Did you spend many of your ministerial years in the West or Southwest?
Well, I was there for about 20 years. I was at St. Raphael's only a year, but then I went back to Raphael's during the summers when we went to Loyola Marymount, and for our master's degree, there was Sister Seamus Ann and Catherine Podrick, and they both have since left, and Elaine Huber. They all have departed the congregation. But so I went back to St. Raphael's and stayed there for the summer schools. And then after Raphael's, then I went to Douglas, Arizona, and I loved that. And then Tucson, Sacred Heart in Tucson, with Sister Catherine Ann, and those were wonderful years.
Beauty of the
places. Yeah. And then I went to Santa Cruz, and I was there for.
Were you in the working in the hospital?
No, I was in the grade school. I was first grade teacher, and then we had a changeover. The high school closed, and so then I became the principal just of the first 6 grades. And Sister Mary Sorich, she was in another building. They had the 7th and 8th graders there. and she was the junior high person.
Who are some of the sisters you lived with in Santa Cruz?
Santa Cruz. Sister Elizabeth Joseph, and Mary Henry, and Josepha, and Sister Daria, who's here now.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
But I
my.
lived with Daria in Douglas too, and that's where we really became good friends. And then Marie Agnes was the superior in at Holy Cross, and Sister Michael Thomas. I'm trying to think who else was there, and
You've got a good memory.
yeah, but it's still, yeah. Go back there. I can't remember what I did yesterday, but,
Yeah.
but and no, and I love Santa Cruz. Well, I have to say that I have been extremely lucky in my religious life. I have been very, very happy with all my. I only had one mission that was not very appealing, but I was only there a year. I just left after a year.
Well, we all got tested in some way.
We certainly did, and so I just said, "This is that for me." And but anyway, I enjoyed my ministries. I loved teaching. I liked administration, and I really loved community organizing. And then working with the ladies at Grace House was a real privilege.
Tell me this, if you will. You had a brother that entered the seminary. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that the youngest?
No, he was the one right next to me, and he
Was that after you had entered?
Yes, after I entered. Well, it was right within almost the same year, and then he went to the St. Jude Seminary, Claretian Seminary in Momence, Illinois, and he went there, and I had gone to Adrian, so within that year, my mom, I don't know who she called or if my father called, but somebody called and asked if they could bring my brother up to see me here in Adrian because he was gone when I had entered.
At that time, couldn't our parents come every month?
No, this was,
Or didn't your parents visit you while you were in the...
I was,
Progeny.
but this was like...
This was out of the
This
blue.
was out of the ordinary. I mean,
Yes.
this was... but anyway, I can remember Sister Margaret Phillip called me and she said, your family is coming like in an hour or something, and so you can stay with them for the afternoon and have a good visit. Your mother wanted your brother to be able to come up to see you, and because we were pretty close. Oh, I was just floored. But we had the best visit, and so they came and we. I don't know. We didn't go out. I don't know what we did, but I can remember we had a very nice visit. And
Did he, was
No.
it Tom?
Then
Did
he
he
left.
pursue?
No, he graduated from the high school there, but then after that he went to, he came back to Chicago, went to St. Rita's, and he is the proud father of 5 children.
My.
And yeah,
So how many nieces and nephews do you?
it's hard for, I think I have about 9 nieces and nephews together, and then about another 9 or so who are grandnieces and nephews. And everything.
What would you like them to know about your mother and father that they may not know?
Well, I think I'd like them to know how good they were. And I think of my father, in particular, my mother. Well, my mother took care of her father-in-law, my grandfather. He had a stroke, and he lived with us the whole time, until he died. And we always had somebody living with us. Then when Grandpa died, then my father had a call one Sunday. I'll still remember that day. The phone call came, and my mom said, "Your dad went down to pick up a woman called Jenny Martin." And I said, "Who's Jenny Martin?" She said, "Well, we're not quite sure, but she's a cousin somehow." But anyway, she was the medical records person at Mercy Hospital. And they want her to leave, and she has no place to go. So she called her father, and because she knew my father through my grandfather, who was an old buddy of Jenny's brother. But this is what we think was the connection.
There was a connection.
Yeah. So anyway, my father left right away, and he went down to Mercy Hospital, and he picked up Jenny, and she was, oh, Mister, it'll only be for a week or so, and she was very elderly and very, very frail. But she came in, and she stayed for 3 years.
Oh, my heavens.
But she was the sweetest thing, and
How generous. How
Oh,
generous.
my mom and then my dad had a stroke, and my mom took care of him for 3 years. I mean, he was bedridden, so I mean, I just want my nieces and nephews to know that, you know, my mother was a total saint taking care of both of these men, but then the generosity in terms of having Jenny come and live with, and then Jenny became part of the family. I mean, when they ever came to Adrian, brought Jenny with them. But Jenny was really hard of hearing, though. She was, and when, no, I laugh because Jenny always wanted to do something to help, you know, and she wanted to do the dishes every night. And my mother would say, "No, Jenny, you don't have to do the dishes. You know, we've got all these healthy kids around, they can." But Jenny would be very hurt if we didn't let her do the dishes. But we had a long kitchen, and there was the dining area was at one end, and the sink was at the other end. Well, Jenny would take a cup, and she'd shovel over. Jenny, please. And then she'd take a cup, another cup, back and forth. It'd take her till 9 o'clock about just to clear the table. And,
One final question, Mary Kay. Is there some reason why the Sisters of, I presume, School Sisters of Notre Dame at Longwood, is that correct?
yes.
Why didn't they snatch you up? Or why didn't you?
I didn't even, they were a what they considered semi-cloistered at the time. And there was only their pattern was that you would go home 3 times in your life.
Oh my.
And that did not appeal to me.
So you'd go for your mother's death and your father's death. And,
yeah, and that
in
was
a,
it. So,
a
but
wedding.
I mean, my mother and dad, I mean, they were not at all convinced that that was a good, but I didn't even think about that. I mean, they were, I loved the Adrians, I think this is kind of a common thing. They were very, very happy all the time. And it was, that was the outward appearance. I know they couldn't be happy all the time, but but when they would come back at lunchtime, we'd be all lined up out in the playground, and then the nuns would come down from the convent, and they'd all be laughing, and we'd all look at each other and say, "What do they think is so funny?"
Now you know.
Now you know.
Now
yes.
you know. Well, God bless you, and thank you for your peaceful and prayerful and friendly presence. I'm very inspired by you. God
Thanks
bless
a
you.
lot, Jody.